The book of Daniel. So I decided to do this video because tomorrow is Daniel, my son, our son. God is your son. He your son, Daniel. It's his birthday, his 21st birthday tomorrow. So with that, I decided to study why I chose Daniel for Daniel. So Daniel was supposed to be Joshua, and his little sister said there's too many Joshuas in our family. That's why he's not Joshua. But the reason why Daniel is Daniel, Daniel means God is my judge. God is my judge. That's the meaning of the name Daniel. I chose the name Daniel for such different reason. Daniel was not supposed to even be born. Daniel, the minute I was pregnant with Daniel, I started having contractions. That's how I even knew I was pregnant with Daniel. It was excruciating pain, and I didn't understand. And Daniel, all through the pregnancy, I was bedridden. I was on medicine. I had to drink like 2-3 gallons of water just to keep the contractions down. On medicine through the whole term. I went to the doctors in the beginning 3 times a week, and then it was just ridiculous. Like I felt every day, although they said no, it wasn't. Well, that particular day when Daniel was born, it was a day before I was 7 months pregnant, and that's the day he was born. I was like 8.5 centimeters and ready for this baby to be born, and not even 5 minutes later Daniel was born. So we call him Daniel Boom because that's how he was born. So with that in mind, the book of Daniel. So I'm going to read some of these out of chapter 1. There's so much in the book of Daniel, but I'm going to focus on chapter 1. I'm going to also refer to chapter 2 at some of the points, but chapter 1 basically is where I'm going to focus on. So it says, in the 3rd year of the reign, Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. So I'm going to give you a little background history about it. Basically, God has said, listen, you guys have not done the right thing. And eventually that cost, so Joy is screaming, you're fake, to her brother, okay? Anyway, Jehoiakim, king of Judah, God allowed him to be captured because of the sin that was going on in the lives of God's people. So eventually, Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon, captured the king of Judah. And imagine that. He gets captured, the leader, and I could just almost think, not only is he captured, but it says some of the articles of God, like what they consider valuable, was also captured. So now you have the king in the hands of the enemy, the valuable, which is also in the hands of the enemy, and then this king decides that he's going to put it in his treasure, in the place where he puts the treasures of his God. Okay, and then it goes on to says that these things were carried to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put in the treasure of the house of the God of Babylon. Okay, so imagine God allows you to be captured. Then God allows what you hold important for the enemy to also have control of. And then, if that wasn't enough, then the best of your people, then they also are in captivity. So the king decided that he wanted the best and he had a few of the best young men that were going to be brought in and trained under what they believed. So God sometimes allows us to be captured under the control of the enemy so that he can accomplish the plan of God that's connected to you. So we don't hear about this king. I can't even pronounce his name. Jehoiakim, like I don't even know who he is, but I know Daniel. So sometimes God would allow the plan of God, his plan, to be connected to us, and we don't even get it, because Daniel had big things that he was going to do in the world. So the big picture, we sometimes don't see it because we don't see the connection that is happening. God sometimes allows us to be captured and under the control of the enemy so we can accomplish the plan of God to those that are connected and are linked to us. We, because we're so into ourselves, we see it about us, right? About our call, our ministry, our egos, our plan. And God may be doing it because there's a Daniel that's connected to us. And it's not about us. The problem is it's not about us. It's about the plan of God for our lives. See, I ask you today, which Daniel? What Daniel is connected to you? Is the Daniel connected to you in your job? In your marriage? In your ministry? In your neighborhood? There's a Daniel. There's a Daniel. And God's going to do great things through that Daniel. If we focus on that Daniel that God has connected us, we may understand how God really truly works. His thoughts, the Bible says his thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways, but we think it's about us. Each one of us, as a mom, as the mother of Daniel, I want you to know that we all need a Daniel. There is greatness in someone that's connected to us. So when the enemy comes against us, it's because of that greatness. It's because of that call of God. It's because of that child, because of that person that's going to be able to interpret the king's dreams and the king's visions, right? I'm sure that Jehoiakim, the king of Jerusalem, that when he was captured, he probably said, like David said, who does this uncircumcised Babylonian thinks he is? Like now he's got the king of Jerusalem, right? The king of Judah. He captures him. He captures what's the treasures of the kingdom. And then the best of the best, he also captures. And now, not only are they captured, he said, bring me the best men, the best young men, so I can train them and teach them the way of Babylon. And they were supposed to be eating the king's food and learning the king's literature and feeding on the food and the wine that the king was supposed to provide, right? But Daniel said no. Daniel said no. And that's what I love about Daniel. See, I didn't know. Today, Daniel, tomorrow, Daniel's going to be 21. I didn't know that Daniel was going to be the Daniel. I wear this shirt, and I said it to him. I wear this shirt as I think of you because I'm celebrating you. You are a unicorn. And that's what Daniel was. The Daniel that I named my son after, that's what he was. This man that came from a different country, he was an evangelist, preaching his heart out. And I hope that I do some kind of service to the scripture like that man did, because he preached about a young man that was so different, that was so filled with God that it didn't matter what the peer pressure said. It didn't matter what others thought. He said, no, test test this. And I love that he said, allow me to be in this test for 10 days. To me, 10 means so much. Like, I believe we're a 10. I believe that I'm a 10. I believe that my Daniel is a 10. And every Daniel connected to what you're going through, they're a 10 as well. Like, I didn't know exactly what having Daniel was going to do to my life. See, Vanessa was a child that, although she was not my oldest, she was not a child that we planned. It was like, yes, we're ready. We had just gotten married, and it was okay to be a mom, because now I had this title, wife, and it was okay. And I was all ready, and I was all in. And then Junior, it was like, wait a minute, you can't have children because of all the mistakes you have made. And it was like, no, hell no. I'm gonna have a son, and his name is Marco. And I named him, and I was waiting, and I was expecting. But when Daniel came by surprise, not to God, but to me, it was a surprise. And then Daniel, I was gonna have to really pray and practice the things that I had learned, just like this young man Daniel. He had to learn and be in conviction of what he believed. He didn't have to be the same like the people in Babylon. He didn't have to be that. He could be different. He knew what it was like to believe the way he believed and hold true the truth that he learned. So the king was questioning, I'm sure, everything that was happening to him, not understanding that this Daniel connected to him. He had to get there to be able to shine for God, to be able to interpret the dream of this king that wasn't even the king of Judah. They were in captivity because of their sin, and they needed someone to come along and interpret what God had. And this is the first trial as a young man that Daniel had to go through. We see him later on in chapter 6, where there's another test where he decides, I'm not going to bow down to no king. I know my king, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what is happening in your work where they're saying, you got to do this. Maybe curse, maybe this, maybe that, maybe go out and drink and do this and do that. And you're saying, I know whose I am and what I believe in. I'm sure that this king questioned, because now he's in captivity, right? He was no longer the king of Judah. His title had been stripped so that this Daniel could be raised as a leader and shine for God. And I'm not sure what exactly you had to let go of. He had to let go of being the king of Judah. He had to allow himself to be captured. And the things that belong to the temple, the things of God. He had no choice anymore. And sometimes we are in those situations. Sometimes that's exactly what happens to us. Other people have control. And it could have been that this king was also living in sin. But I'm sure, as the word says, it was all these other kings also. All these other people that did not serve God. And eventually God said, this is what's going to happen. And this was the result. This is playing it forward. This is the result that had already taken place. Many times it could be the things that we consider dear. The things that we consider dear, right? The treasures. So it could be that marriage. It could be those kids. It could be that job, that everything is stripped. Because God has a Daniel that he's raising, right? The ministry. Maybe you have to step down. Maybe those same people that prayed over you, maybe those are the same people that say, hey, we need you to step down. And you're saying, like the king, that we don't even hear his name. I don't even know who this king is. Like, who am I and where am I and what happened here, right? It's a humbling place to be, right? When we need to surrender and surrender our best, right? The other lesson that I learned from Daniel 1 is sometimes the enemy will come to our city, right? In verse 2, it says, this is what it says, and the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar,